Hey everyone, welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. This is our first post-holiday recording, so you'll notice that our buddy Rob there no longer has his Christmas background for us.
That's right.
Things are looking far less festive
No
over there.
lights, no lights.
And I'm psyched to have both Rob and Tim back. I was forced to go solo on our last episode. You know, it kind of hanging out there without a net. It's tough being all by myself.
Sorry to do that, man, but it was my birthday and my 22-year anniversary. So she called the trump card.
She called it in and said, "You're not doing anything today."
Yeah.
You know, Brian's got a big enough mouth; he can take care of that anyway.
I didn't say it like that, Brian.
It wasn't that smooth. Yeah, I had the luxury of being at urgent care all day, so that was fun, both for me and my son.
Yeah, we're lucky to have Tim back today. He's been like the walking wounded for the better part of a month.
Yeah, he had cooties for a while.
Finally getting back.
But it is good to have the whole team back in the new year. But more importantly than us being here, we've got a great guest today, and really excited to have him on. We've got Mark Alayev over at Thread, and he is joining us today. And Mark, it's been a couple months since you and I got to see each other in person when Thrive kicked my butt in the pitch competition. But really psyched to see you again, man. It was great hanging out with you and your team down at IT Nation.
Likewise, Brian. It was just a little friendly competition, no friendly fire. And happy holidays to everyone. Happy New Year's. Still saying it to all the folks I haven't seen. So I'm glad to see you again, Brian. Good to meet Tim and Rob.
Yeah, good to meet you as well.
Yeah, you know, we had a lot of fun. I mean, if you guys haven't met the Thread team, there's probably no more fun company out there than these guys. They're always up to some sort of hijinks, and we got to be back-to-back booth buddies with at least part of the Thrive team and really got to know some of those guys, and it was a lot of fun hanging out with Matt and others. You know, Bobby I've known for a bit, but Matt was a blast to get to know also during that time. But anyhow, Mark, they're not here to hear about our pitch it stories. If anything, on this podcast, they're probably tired of the word pitch it. From here, we're going to move into a little bit maybe about your backstory. Tell us, you know, a little bit about yourself and how you came upon the world of MSP.
Yeah, I would say I feel like I was born and raised in an MSP. My background, you know, I'm extremely technical and have worked in an MSP for about 10, 11 years. That was broken up. It was like a good relationship with a nice little break in between. But I started off, actually, you know, there was a lot of trials and tribulations through my journey. I started off with a really rocky, kind of hard spot with my family where I was forced to work. And one of the skills that I picked up when I was younger, apart from selling iPhones, that was a really lucrative business when iPhones came out, was building computers. So I started, you know, with a job role that sounds like from The Office. I was an intern on the service desk at an MSP when I was 17. So I worked through the rank there, worked on the NOC, the Network Operations Center, the service desk, ended up getting all the way up to a junior system admin. So really started fixing computers, getting dispatched through snow to reroute hedge fund portfolio managers' homes on Christmas Eve.
You're a young guy, and they put you in the line of fire right away.
That's right. That's right.
Low man in the totem pole for that one.
That's right. Well, one time I was supposed to be sent on a helicopter because one of these hedge fund guys was having a nuclear meltdown. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go there. Somebody more senior got to go on the helicopter ride.
Right.
It's amazing how all of a sudden a senior person will pick up a ticket when there's a perk that goes along with it, right?
Yeah.
So if nothing else, this taught you some people skills real early in your career, which certainly, you know, has probably played very well throughout your time in the IT space.
That's right. And you know, that's a great point you bring up, because a lot of it, there was obviously an aspect of being technical, but a lot of it, especially with, you know, I worked for an MSP called RFA, which is focused on the financial sector. Really white glove. A lot of it is how you present, how do you handle, how often do you follow up. I also learned how to get yelled at 17 different ways for not putting in my time entries. So that never left. That stayed with me even through a Thread.
So that's where the PTSD first started. I get it. You know, you get that coupled with a few type A hedge funders, right? And that's not an easy battlefield for a 17-year-old.
That's right. That's right. And then, you know, what was interesting is the startup scene was really evolving in New York, and I had an urge to build something, and I tried to pitch inside the MSP. It was about 80 people back then. By the time I left it the second time around, not because of me, but in general, the company was about 250 people. I wanted to build a portal where people could log in and see what was going on. There wasn't any portals. There was no cloud radial. I wanted to do all of this innovation, and it was so hard for a service organization to understand product development. And I think that's going to be a theme that you'll see appear throughout my life. So I ultimately left to start a social network for food, because social networks were being popped up left and right. And it had nothing to do with IT. But I learned a lot. I've raised capital and built a team, learned about product management, software development lifecycle, ended up getting folded into delivery.com, where I worked as a product manager. And then every time I try to leave, they pull me right back in. And RFA pulled me right back in as a director of service delivery.
Awesome. So that's a pretty varied backstory, because it sounds like you went really from the more infrastructure, security-based world of the IT group into development. And those are two different worlds, really. At least I've come to realize that as I came over here to the vendor landscape. It sounds like that really helped round out a lot of your skills that you're now able to employ in the thread.
Yeah, and I think the common thread there is the desire to create experience, right? Whether it was to provide an awesome, just fix someone's problems. I mean, I have the best stories that a help desk technician could have, where a woman would forward her emails to a fax machine in her hotel concierge to print because her printer wouldn't work. And it was like, I fixed that for her. And she was like, it was incredible. And I think the common thread was wanting to create experiences that make people say, wow, that was amazing. Whether that was through service or through product. I would say that's the theme that has followed me through.
Awesome. So, when you talk about some of that service delivery, let's transition here, I guess, at this stage into a little bit about what Thread does. Maybe give us a quick overview of what Thread is all about for the listener who might not be familiar with the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So Thread is a service experience platform. And what we do is we help to innovate on both the end customer experience as well as the technician experience. And the way that we do that is by providing digital first communication. So many people know us as the chat platform. We provide probably the leading solution at this point of chat for the MSP industry. It's multi-tenanted, it integrates with PSA, and it handles all the nuances that an MSP would, because an MSP has access to your customers or their customers' Microsoft Teams environment. And so they have the ability to deploy Teams apps. And there's this interesting dynamic of B2B. And I do have more of the journey to share if you all are interested on how we came to this realization. But we essentially provide this elevated customer experience that's chat first in Teams and Slack and desktop. And on the technician side, I finally solved the time entry problem. We have a product called Inbox and Service Copilot. So it's a real-time engine that lets you organize your service requests and have a conversational interface with a service copilot that's writing your time entries, that's auto prioritizing, auto categorizing. And now we've launched Service Ask Copilot, which is you have a chat GPT interface that reads the whole conversation, and you can have a dialogue of, how do I reboot a QuickBooks server? Can you write me a PowerShell script? Can you tell me what are the next best steps? Draft me an email. So it's all been about removing this overhead work. And a big thing you'll hear from us, we are the radical company, is death to the ticket. Nobody likes them. Customers hate them, technicians hate them. And so we focus on that service experience end to end.
When I think, Rob and I, and well, all three of us, we've been in the industry for a long time at this point. And I would say, especially over the last couple of years, there's been more and more requests for how can we streamline this, right? And I think what you've done, especially from a ticketing standpoint, is kind of on the revolutionary side, at least in the very beginning here, right? So we've talked to more and more MSPs where the ticket entries and just the time that it takes to track the utilization rate of techs and engineers, it can be a bear.
Daunting, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the historian of the ticket. I could tell you everything about the ticket and its origin in the service industry. I mean, it started in 1960s as a physical ticket that you would have to punch it into a mainframe in order to store what's the status of the request. And that's all it is. It just continued to move forward, and it's just a data store, right? Like, what's the status? Who's assigned? You know, do you have your time entries to bill? It has nothing to do with actually facilitating the communication, right? I think the last innovation in the MSP space was the email connector from ConnectWise in like 1999, where they're like, oh shit, we can create a ticket from an email. But apart from that, it's been, you know, you have a phone call and you have to put it in manually. You have to go back to the ticket to change the status. It's completely decoupled from the workflow. And what happens is it kills your margins as an MSP. You have technicians that have to do this administrative work. You end up hiring dispatchers that have to go ahead and now manage this. And when I was finally director of service delivery, I was like, yes, I'm no longer on the time entry writing side. And I got to experience the whole other animal of chasing people to approve their timesheets and then dealing with customers disputing time entries. And it's, you know, it just kills your service margin, and you come into it because you're customer friendly and you have technical know-how, and then you die by a ticket, death by a ticket.
No, all those things that you've just touched upon were so big when I ran my MSP. You know, our dispatcher was continually chasing down people, looking to get those answers, looking to get them done so we can get monthly billings out, especially when we were still in that kind of crossover from T&M into, you know, MSP style work. And it was brutal. It also put a lot of power in a seat that wasn't intended to have power, the dispatcher as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was a unique thing. But I you know, what I love is as technology continues to evolve, and it sounds like you've got a lot of AI interwoven into your platform as well to help decipher some of that data. You know, we're finally looking forward and saying, how do we meet people where they want to communicate? How do we get this embedded into the workflow, as you said, because that was a big challenge. And that was the thing that, you know, guys hated about the tickets, because they would go from one job to the other job. They'd forget to post their time, and then they would just lose track of it. It wasn't even through the fault of their own. They were trying to get problems off the table.
And then guess.
They were trying to do their job. Their job is to fix problems. Like that's what you get paid for, right? And there's other industries that this is happening to. You know, if you look at doctors, and my wife is a nurse practitioner, they're being killed by EMR systems. They spend more time staring at a computer in between the patient than they do at the patient, right? And it's like, this is what creates terrible experiences for the customers that pay.
You know, when we were talking just prior to this call too, and it's also one of the things that led, I know, at least when I had my MSP, to some of our better engineers ultimately wanting to leave, because it was just a burden, the administrative side of the job. And a lot of them would leave us for corporate, where, yeah, they might only be working on one type of technology, but at least they were working on tech all day, right? And not doing administrative
time
functions.
Entries.
You know,
you don't need to bill for them.
Yep. And you were talking a little bit about kind of some of the hardships in recruiting. So, you know, when you look at it from a recruiting tool, it sounds like Thread could even play into a narrative when you're talking to an engineer saying, hey, look, if you've experienced this challenge on other help desks, you might not find that same challenge here.
That's right. Well, you want another radical thought? We've been looking at CSAT for customers. Well, what about satisfaction of our team?
Yeah.
Right. They say that employee satisfaction is the leading indicator for customer satisfaction. If your employees are happy, then they'll be more likely to provide an incredible experience, especially in the service industry, right? Where the service is the product. Like, you need happy people to deliver great service.
Yeah.
Rob, you're our culture champion on this podcast. You know, what are your thoughts around that?
I'll tell you, for two things. I remember when Tim and I were in the industry, the tickets, man, when we would have to chase clients, when I was talking earlier about having to make up time, and you would just guess how long you were at the client, and then we'd send the itemization to the client, and they would say, oh, he wasn't here for 2.5 hours. He was only here for 1.5 hours. And then you have to go through all that mess. The amount of work that compounded from that, you know, guessing was just brutal. We hated end of the month, and end of the quarter was even worse. So making this whole thing a streamlined automated system is just brilliant. It's going to help a lot. And I'll tell you, Brian, to your point, recruiting and recruiting so hard right now, and any advantage you can get is just makes you leaps and above. If you can tell somebody, look, we have our whole ticketing system automated now, so you don't even have to worry about that. Chick, sign me up. That's how easy it would be for an engineer at that level.
Yeah, especially if you've got an engineer coming from another MSP. I mean, that's an absolute no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bane of their existence. I mean, geez, Rob, think of Monique back in the day. She would spend days, sometimes weeks at the end of a quarter trying to true up everything. It was, it's a lot of wasted time going back.
I would use that as a marketing tool for my recruiter. I would definitely use that as a marketing tool for my recruiter.
Oh, yeah.
Rob, that's a phenomenal idea. You know, now that you're saying it, one thing that what we see in adoption patterns is once Thread is adopted by the MSP, you know, the existing technicians that are already used to the ways, whether they're good or bad, obviously change is always hard. But what we see is that new technicians that come into the company don't even go into the PSA anymore. They're just like, why would I do this?
Yeah.
Why would I learn this?
Yeah.
When I can just do it in that simple way, you know. And if I had a scanner on every single MSP's technician's computer, you would find a lot of notepads full of time entry notes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
No doubt. You know, and you know, on the other side, and going back to what you were talking about, Rob, and Tim, I think you talked a little bit about somebody named Monique, but I used to have that same thing on the last day, or the 29th of every month is when I used to stay home. Only work on time entries, read every time entry, see if it was tied to, you know, if it should be tied to a contract or it should be billable, because usually your tech team doesn't know that part of the equation either. But it was critical. I mean, I would find thousands of dollars in that day that we would have otherwise not captured without a full timesheet review at the enterprise level. But man, the level of work it was. I mean, it's 12 days a year.
And Brian, you brought up a good point that I think is worth double clicking into for the folks that are going to be listening. You know, you said it was a big problem while it was TNM, right? And it was because, you know, again, I don't know if you know this, but the MSP industry stole the PSA acronym from the legal industry, which are notorious for billing based on time. So that's actually where it was born. But you're right, you know, like as they progressed to a managed service that was a monthly recurring, that became less of an issue in terms of billings, right? Because they're more predictable. It's all you can eat. Obviously, it still exists in the professional services side where you're doing project work or fixed fee work. But the reality is, like, how do you price your all you can eat service? It's based still on those time entries. What is the average amount of time that I'm budgeting per contact per month? That, you know, I know my all-in tech cost. I could back in 3x that, and that's, you know, maybe I'm charging 125 for all you can eat service desk. But if the reporting is bad, you have no idea if you're running a profitable MSP.
And even going off of that, just the human error side of it, right? Even though I'm on the project team and I know those projects theoretically out of scope, you'd be amazed how many of them habitually just chose the managed service contract and applied it to their time entry anyway, because that's what they traditionally did for that customer. So, you know, we could probably dive deep into 100 different ways it helps, but basically what it sounds like is it's simplifying that process, and it's obviously helping with the you know, give the management teams the insights they need to better understand the metrics that matter to them as well.
That's right. And I want to demystify, you know, anyone can promise, oh, we'll automate everything for you. And I think that's a big promise to have. And we can't automate everything. We have a really bold vision on how we're going to empower people to do their best work. And we're going to do that through Service Magic. But I want to demystify a lot of these things. We have two incredible things happening at Thread. One is what we call opinionated software. It's a new type of software approach where it's not like you go into PSA, you could do 17 things. You could set up all these workflows, boards, and it lets you kind of create whatever you want, but it doesn't help you to create structure on how to run a really good business. And that was a very old way of building software where, you know, you go into Salesforce, you go into Dynamics, it's just like you can do anything you want. But the question is, what do I do? Where we have a very strong opinion, and because we understand the life cycle of a service request, you respond to a thread, we automatically assign you. We start the timer. We change the status. There's so much that's happening because we understand the nuances of the workflow, and we're showing you through opinionated software, how to run a very successful MSP. The other angle is we were very fortunate to bet big on conversational interfaces. And when ChatGPT came out, right, it's called ChatGPT. And we make this joke, it's probably a dad joke. It's not called phone GPT or email GPT. It's called ChatGPT. And so our conversational interface and our large conversational data set gives us an advantage that you won't see in other AI tools because they don't have a conversational interface. So, you know, it's less about thread, but like, how do I win with generative AI? How do I extract value? Well, do you have a unique data set? Do you have a unique interface? And so we're able to extract a lot, like priorities, categorization, a lot of those fields. Like we're going down and like, how can we stop going in to change every field on a ticket? And so I would say like that, looking into the future, thread aside, I don't like to pitch thread, opinionated software, and what are the advantages that you have in your data sets to leverage generative AI? And you know, we've been fortunate to be investing into both of those for quite some time.
Yeah, Mark, that was a dad joke. You're right.
Yeah. You beat me to it, but yes.
It was better than saying I haven't seen Brian all year. Fair
point.
So we just got a few minutes left here today, but you know, Mark, knowing that you guys, you've just talked a little bit about AI, you know, where do you really see AI taking us over the next 3 to 5 years? You know, no crystal ball, obviously, but your gut, what do you see happening that might be really impactful to the MSP industry over that time period?
There's an interesting intersection that we're coming up into, where at the intersection of what's happening with AI and generative AI, especially, you know, the breakthroughs in large language models, and a lot of the work that's happening with companies like Roost, Pia on business process automation, robotic process automation, and mapping out some of those workflows. I think the convergence point is what we call, you know, full service automation. And essentially is, can we understand the intent of the request and can we map it to the right action? So if we can understand that you're asking for a Microsoft 365 license and we have all the tools in place like CIPP.app, right, where you can go and say, okay, let's check how many licenses we have. Then we don't have any licenses. We need a purchase approver. We're the communication platform. Let's reach out to the right people for approval. They approve it. It comes back. We trigger an action. I think that's the intersection of what we're looking for, right? There's a lot of normalization that's happening with the automation work. And there's a lot about creating a digital first communication layer that powers AI. So I think what's going to happen is that the simple tasks are going to start getting automated. The example I like to use is everyone loves the Amazon chatbot because it refunds your money automatically, right? Up to a certain amount. So I imagine a lot of those simpler tasks going away, allowing for techs to continue to focus on really meaty, complex problem solving, or even like, you know, to Brian, what you do of like, well, let's focus on technology, not as something that is a drag on you that you constantly need to fix problems. How can we look forward and help you innovate your law office, your dental office by repurposing those resources and being a true technology partner? So that's my vision. I think that we're going to see a lot of simple tasks in the next 3 to 5 years disappear. And we're going to see a lot of shift of resources move upwards towards more complex problems.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't think there's going to be job loss because I think the market right now is it's really hard to find good people. Yeah. So I actually think it's going to be repurposing and up-leveling significantly versus like, you know,
which obviously is very attractive for those that are job seekers, right? You know, it's not going to be doing some of the lower level stuff long term. Awesome. Well, Mark, that was great. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts you want to share with us. Anything else?
No, I mean, we'll be at Nerdio. It's our first time participating there. So if anyone's all inclusive in Dominican Republic, we'd love to see you there. And we'll be dropping some really interesting news in March. That's, you know, that we'll talk more about our full service automation platform and how we'll be able to use digital first communication to pioneer that. So those are the two exciting things that I have.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, well, we're looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mark, we really appreciate you being here today. For anybody that wants to get in touch with Mark, we will be including his LinkedIn profile on the podcast, and we encourage you to go check it out. This episode will be up on MSP Business School and anywhere that you get your podcast. So, Mark, we thank you for being here with us today on this first podcast of the new year. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. And you can reach us at magic@getthread.com.
Okay.
Awesome. And we'll post that all up in our show notes and make sure that everybody's got a way to get in touch with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a
right.
good one.
Take care.
Thank you.